I'm Susan Clark, for those who don't know me. I'm an assistant professor at Stanford. Brandon Hensley is also here, and together we co-organize the Pan-Experiment Galactic Science Group. This should be a fairly brief, and then we're happy to take questions or discuss. But for those of you that haven't heard of this group, or maybe it's on your radar, but a reminder will get you to engage more, we want to tell you a little bit about what this is all about. So we organize a space, a virtual space for people to gather who are interested broadly in doing galactic science with CMB experiments. So we really see our group as dedicated to galactic science as opposed to foreground mitigation. We see ourselves as dedicated to the astrophysics of the Milky Way in particular, and our vision is really to bring together the people that are interested in broadening the science case of the experiments that we all collaborate on, and really making the most of those data for galactic science specifically. And to the extent that those efforts do inform foreground modeling choices or foreground parameterization, we do interface with working groups and various collaborations for whom that is their primary interest. So to that end, we see our scientific scope as being, as including things like star formation, the study of turbulence in the interstellar medium, the study of magnetic fields in the galaxy, the study of the physics of dust and cosmic ray radiation and propagation. Elena is of course a useful expert in that domain. And the phase structure of the interstellar medium, all of that wonderful rich physics for which these experiments are collecting useful data. And that there are lots of things that you can do with CMB experiments that aren't cosmology, but also aren't necessarily directly within our purview. And so we usually consider more specialized analyses like transient science and solar system science to be outside the scope of this particular group, although of course very interesting in their own right. So our vision here is really to streamline collaboration, because there are many of us who care about these things, but we're spread across a whole bunch of different experiments. It's not efficient for us to have 9 different telecons discussing the same thing in the context of every different experiment. And so part of what we want to do here is really pool expertise from the community. And that includes both the community who are sitting within these CMB experiments and wanting to use the data for galactic science, and also the broader ISM community. So we have members of our group who aren't formally connected to an experiment, but are really ISM experts. And so we're making sure that we have that perspective as well. We also see ourselves as a way to facilitate involvement of external collaborators on galactic science papers that maybe happen within the domain of a particular experiment, but where expertise from an external collaborator just for that paper within the bounds of that experiment's regulations for how to go about proposing for an external collaborator, we can sort of facilitate that happening if an idea is sparked. That would be a good collaboration between different people within our group. And we are also creating a shared toolbox. So we have a dedicated GitHub repo, and this lives outside of any one experiment, which is important for all of us. And our goal there is to develop and standardize analysis software and data simulation tools and so forth for really the whole community to use in an open source way. More about our efforts there from Brandon in a minute. So really, we're sharing expertise, not data. This is not a complicated MOU for data sharing or anything like that. We're just gathering people and sharing our expertise and generating new ideas. Currently, we have our membership structure is essentially that an experiment can join, And then anyone who is a member of that collaboration is welcome to join us. And so we currently have ACT, Bicep Keck, BLAST, CCAT Prime, CMBS4, Lightbird, SO, and SPT as official collaboration members. If your experiment is not on this list but would like to be, just talk to Brandon and I, and we will be happy to discuss. And students of members are welcome to join. We know that depending on the policy of each of these collaborations, student membership is sort of categorized differently. From our perspective, if you are a student of a member, we're very happy to have you, and we encourage students to join us because this is a really great environment for learning more about the ISM and galactic science. And so we have essentially a Google form that is linked here, and maybe we can drop it in the chat as well if you're interested. And then we have our own dedicated Slack channel, which again lives outside of any one experiment's interaction apparatus. We're currently at 97 members on Slack, so perhaps someone here will be lucky member number 100. That would be an exciting milestone for us. And so the two of us, Brandon Hensley and I, organized this group. This is a link to our Slack and GitHub repo. And we want to make very clear that we we see ourselves as helpful scaffolding for efforts within individual experiments. Any project organization, paper authorship, anything like that will always follow the relevant publication policies of the individual experiments. We are not looking to step on any toes there. And I think, Brandon, over to you.
Sure, thanks, Suzanne. So what is it that we actually do when we get together and meet? So we're currently set up in a mode where we're alternating between two different types of meetings. So we meet every week on Wednesdays, although not this week because we encourage folks to attend the Cosmoglobe meeting. Half of the time we spend working on galactic emission modeling, and I'll talk a bit about that in just a second. And then on the alternate weeks, we have a kind of galactic science journal club. And that can have a number of different flavors. It's a kind of an open call if folks have something that they've been working on that they want to talk about and present results. And sometimes we, if we see something interesting on the archive, or somebody sees, oh, wouldn't it be really great to bring in X person to give us a talk about some topic? We'll bring in external ISM folks from really across astronomy to give a talk. So we've had quite a range of these journal club presentations. So just a few highlights recently listed there. The ACT maps of the Galactic Center from Yuan Guan. Ranush Tahani came and talked about the 3D modeling of magnetic fields and molecular clouds. Thomas Rennie gave us an overview of the CO map galactic plane survey. Rich T came in and talked about CO line polarization and disks. We've also had talks on abundances in stellar structures, on synchrotron emission at very low frequencies. So really just a place to bring in experts, talk about galactic science, and think about ways that we could potentially have synergistic analyses or do new and interesting things with our data. Okay, so that's half the time is this journal club. The other half is we've been developing the PySM software. So that's the Python Sky model. And if you're not familiar with this software, so originally work of Ben Thorne and collaborators, and Andrea Zonka has since developed it further, and a lot of work from a lot of people have gone into it, and building on the legacy of the Planck Sky model as well, to generate mock realizations of galactic emission at any CMB relevant frequency that you would want, where to the extent possible, the maps that are produced by this code are constrained by available observations. So if you want to generate an IQU map of dust and synchrotron and AME and CO emission at 115 gigahertz, PySM provides you a way to do that where your large scales would look like the large scales that have been well measured by the ensemble of experiments, and then you get some realization of the small scale structure that you can then use in your forecasting, modeling, testing out component separation software, et cetera. So again, the goal of this code is to generate models of IQU maps of galactic emission over the full sky at any microwave frequency consistent with the latest measurements. And what we've done in this group is really brought together the range of expertise both within the CMB community, thinking very hard about what we need in terms of a next generation of models to do the kind of forecasting analyses we want to do, but then also the Galactic ISM experts to be able to say, well, if we're going to have a credible model of dust or synchrotron or whatever, then it really should have these sorts of features. So bringing in this expertise to define a new suite of models and to implement new functionality into the software. So we've currently proposed a suite of models that goes kind of from optimistic, so the simplest parametric models you can think of that are consistent with current data, to sort of a best guess model where it's a bit more motivated by the ISM physics, the kind of complexities we expect to be there, and then pessimistic where you have things like polarized AME, which might be there, but which we think maybe we'll get lucky and that won't end up being a problem. So the big methodological development here is that you can now produce stochastic simulations of galactic emissions. So in the old version of PySM, if you ran, the dust to model 3, then that would look the same every time that you generated dust to model 3. And so what we've done is we've implemented models where the small scale structure is stochastic. So if you need 100 realizations of the sky at some frequency, now you can do that where the large scales will stay the same because they're well measured. We don't want those to be randomized, but then the small scale structure is actually different. And so that allows you to do statistical analyses, wrap this up in maybe in CMC, for instance, to see how foreground uncertainties propagate into your final answer. So we have these new stochastic models, and then there's also the MKD layer model has also now been implemented into PySM that introduces line of sight frequency decorrelation. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, so we're working on documenting all of this up. So the models are actually already available to be downloaded and run. So you can find the links to that on the GitHub. So if these are of interest to you, they're already available. And so we're just now working on testing, make sure everything is working the way that we want it to, and writing this up in a paper, which would be the first paper to come out of our PanX Galactic Science group. So just to wrap up, finally, really we see this as a galactic science meeting place. It's a good way to pool expertise, keep informed of what relevant data might be available, not just in the microwave, but looking at very low frequencies, high frequencies, stellar data, 3D extinction maps, all of that good stuff, and a place where we can discuss the actual galactic emission physics to identify these synergies with other wavelengths, other collaborations. So we see this also as a physics first way to develop new simulations and parametric models. So, not just satisfying the demands of the CMB community, but also putting forward models that the ISM community are happy to endorse and that reflect to the extent that we can, the full complexity of what we expect from the interstellar medium. And so this naturally provides a point of interface with foreground mitigation efforts. So even though that isn't our main focus, it naturally has relevance to what's going on in that regard in these collaborations. So I've pasted the link to the Google form in the Zoom chat. So please, if you're interested, fill that out. And again, if your experiment is not affiliated but would like to be, we'd really like for you to get in touch with us. So thank you, and we're certainly happy to take any questions that you might have.